you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and now here's your host, Rich Barris.
Hey, good morning, folks. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. It's going to be a fun one today, a little seasonal flavor, because I'll be traveling next week, which I guess you probably already know. We were going to save this for next week, but looks like we'll at least get Friday, but I wanted to do this. Thank you, darling. Wanted to do this today because first, it's fresh. I see that everybody is talking about Barnes' rant last night in the chat room, from YouTube to Getter and all around. We'll get to that if you want. We'll get to it. We'll also talk about what's going on with Twitter and what happened the other night. The left now is arguing that journalists like Aaron Rupar are being purged from Twitter because they're investigating Elon Musk. I don't think Elon Musk is a very new to people probing his life. And I hate to say, it's a dose of your own medicine, and you're not taking it well or as classy or as, as remember Jake Tapper? Well, if you don't like it, just get off YouTube kind of, I just get off Twitter kind of thing. I see all the right complaining about being censored and depersoned and deplatformed, and well, you don't like it very much at all now, do you? All right. And Aaron Rupar is not a journalist. He's a political activist. He is one of the biggest purveyors of misinformation on the internet. The guy pushed Russian collusion delusion like it was, candy on Halloween. And unfortunately, he and others ended up deluding a madman into thinking that Donald Trump was an agent of the Russian government and that Republicans were enabling him as an agent of the Russian government to take down the House from the inside. So he decided to get a firearm and open fire on Republicans practicing for a charity baseball game. So let's talk about more of that, however, later. So we'll also talk about Trump's big announcement, which was the big announcement. We'll get into that. But first, I just want to be fun. We asked people on social media what their favorite rendition, and we said it could be, and actually, let me get you the wording. It could be, I want to get you the exact word, because I didn't say what movie. It could have been anything. All right. Maybe it was plays. Maybe there's something on Broadway or any local. And you like that. That's your favorite, right? So what's your favorite version, rendition, etc. of Charles Dickens's classic, A Christmas Carol? And oh boy, the feelings run deep. All right. But it was extremely close. I'm a little bit surprised by some of these results. I figure I'll do kind of like a backward rundown. Okay. Which is, let's start with some of the ones that didn't get all of that much, but there were actually a couple of ones I want to mention because there was talk about. So a couple of people pointed out that their favorite version of A Christmas Carol is actually not the Christmas Carol at all. It's the story of Charles Dickens writing The Christmas Carol, which is a book called a movie called The Man Who Invented Christmas, which is a little bit interesting of a take. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I think it's probably running on like HBO or something right now, because I saw it. I saw it a while ago, but I saw it on recently. It's from 2017, and again, yeah, it's probably playing. It's probably on like Showtime or Cinemax or something. But This is directed by Barrett Nowuri or something, if I'm saying that right. And it stars Dan Stevens as the man himself, Charles Dickens. Very interesting, and I wanted to point that out. But getting into and there's also another one, Morris J. McDonough played Ebenezer Scrooge in a series of plays in 1984, in the winter of 1984. And Jamie Farr from MASH actually played Ebenezer Scrooge at a production that was put on the Ryman Auditorium. So those are some of the periphery ones that actually, when I looked into, if I didn't hear about, were actually, received quite fanfare. All right, Henry Winkler's at the very bottom. I don't know if that's because he decided to support Raphael Warnock in the Georgia runoff or anything, but I completely forgot about this. He is at the very bottom. An American Christmas Carol was released in 1979. Henry Winkler plays the Scrooge character. All right. And hilariously, it's, an American version of it. And it, if you haven't seen it, it's worth seeing. I mean, if you are a fan of A Christmas Carol, they're all worth seeing, right? But the fact of the matter is, this will never end. Netflix just put on another production, and it's an animated version of one that actually is on the list. And I think just many people haven't seen Netflix. My kids just watched it last night. The very incredible voice from the Ebenezer Scrooge and Isabel. The pipes on these actors. Wow. Because it is, in fact, a remake of a musical version, a movie. It's a movie, but it's a musical that was put on, and we're going to talk about it a little bit, that was put on in 1970. All right. There was a redone of that. And boy, wait till we get to this. I think I want to play a couple of the clips from each of these as we go. Nothing big, but without a doubt, a little bit from each to give you an idea of how good some of these characters really were. All right. Guy Pearce. If you haven't seen this, he's down on the list. I'm going up. Okay. And the new one, Spirited, Ryan Reynolds. All right. Guy Pearce's FX, A Christmas Carol, which was put on 2019. It's dark. So if you like the classic, but you're like a Halloween lover and you're dark and you're not ready to get holly jolly, that's probably the one for you. It is twisted. All right. But it's very good. It is. It's just different. Something totally different. I haven't seen Spirited, so don't tell me. All right. I promised the kids we would see that before I have to leave. So we're going to try to watch that this weekend. But I have heard good things. And it, in fact, is already getting votes on something like a social survey. Right. So good for Ryan Reynolds. He's already making an immediate impression. And then some of these others that I absolutely got. And here, actually, I'll show you FX's A Christmas Carol for those, because some of you guys who don't know it, perhaps. Let's see. And I'll pull up some of these IBD things. We'll look at that, and you can see the cast and whatnot. And then some of them I want to play clips of. All right, but I'm not going to do that with this one. These are, some of these other ones that are really down the list. So you'll be able to, oh, look, here, we can play the trailer. Here we go.
Am I not allowed any peace?
I'm going to get hit with a copyright. Watch.
The chain that you must now wear, Mr. Marley.
Merry Christmas to you, Mr. Scrooge.
How many Merry Christmases are meant, and how many are lies?
For the welfare of the poor and destitute.
Are there no prisons?
Some would rather die than go there.
Then let them die. What is this place?
It is the place where Christmas comes to die.
You seem to despise him even more than I do.
Let's not talk about him, not even once.
Why?
It's Christmas.
Prepare ye, Ebenezer. Enough! No, it was never enough. What was the purpose of our gross accumulation? You vandalized the world for this.
What would you do, Mrs. Cratchit, to have me hand you £30, not as a loan, but as a gift?
There are no gifts!
This is not a game, Ebenezer.
I beg of you, enough.
I do this only for the life of my child.
Come and look upon the evil that you did.
All right, so you get the picture. It's dark. All right. It is very dark. It shows what the world is like if he doesn't change. And it's beyond just how much, the good old Master Scrooge could do for his town, do for London. The world basically goes to hell in a handbasket. If somebody wants to tell me what an NFT is, I'd love to hear it. But I know, Katie, I never heard the term either. Call me, old fashioned. Obviously, something, I don't know. But, merch is... you got to hand it to the guy. He did sell them out within 12 hours and made about $4.5 million. But all right, so let's get to another one. Spirited. I'm not going to play that one. Another one that got a lot of votes, but I'm going up. I'm going in reverse. Is Jim Backus in Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol. It's a 1961 animated production. I love it. I remember when I was a kid, I watched it, and quite a bit of people absolutely loved Magoo's version of A Christmas Carol. All right, and that's pretty much one of those classics where they, Disney's got their own, where they take it and they spin it. One of them, I just can't believe did so well.
It's rigged if it's not Mickey Mouse Christmas Carol.
See, Laura's all in on Mickey's A Christmas Carol, which did in fact top quite a bit of them. But we keep that to yourself, Laura. We're getting there, all right? We're getting there. Laura and I, not only do we remember watching Mickey's Christmas Carol, but it's like one of those things with the kids. And somebody said something in their voting, which was eerily similar. She's like, I remember watching them with my grandparents. We had the VHS. We almost burned the tape because we watched it so much. When I was a kid, Mickey's Christmas Carol was a big deal when it came on. My grandfather was like one of those, like old stoic Gary Cooper strong types that sat in the den, and did his own thing. But he never failed to take like something, realize he introduced me to The Hobbit and then got me to read the book when I was a kid because he had taped this weird, obscure special on The Hobbit. And he used to do things like that. So I exactly understand what she's talking about. When it was on one night, he taped it. And maybe when it was like 4 or 5 or whatever it may have been, I watched it for the first time and it became a tradition. So very much exactly like you, I'd watch it with my grandmother and my father every year. All right, this one is a classic. All right, and we are going to see, that's a little long. I don't want to play that long of a take, but we will watch a little bit of one. All right, let's watch a little bit of one. You better not goose me here. I'm going to wind up getting, no doubt, especially when we get to some of them that are more commercial. I bet I'm going to get dinged with a copyright here, but we'll see. All right, Reginald Owen as Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol, 1938 is next on the list. I'm actually a little bit surprised that they didn't score a little bit higher. I'm pretty shocked about that. So let's pop up old Reginald and we'll watch a little part of his version of The Christmas Carol. The Goose.
I want to buy a goose. About 5 and 8 pence, certainly, sir. That's the one. Very good choice, sir. Let me help you. 4 penn'orth of potatoes, 6 penn'orth of mixed nuts, 6 penn'orth of apples. The special pippin, sir, or the medium cookers? The special pippin, yes, sir. And 8 penn'orth of oranges. Thank you, sir. Chestnuts, sir. All on, sir. They warm the innards and cheer the arm. What's Christmas without chestnuts? What indeed? 2 penn'orth or 3.
What indeed? That's a classic. You gotta love this. That's a classic. Reginald Owen did a good job. Definitely a different kind of Scrooge character, though, right? Not the typical Scrooge that we see in some of these others, but without a doubt, did a fantastic job, without a doubt. All right. The next one is the one we were actually just talking about. The talent in this is incredible, and I'm going to play the scene where, to me, I think it's probably the highlight of the entire movie. And as a guy who is so, frankly, as old as he was when he did this, when he played this role, it's incredible. It really is. It's Albert Finney, of course, as Scrooge. That's the name of this rendition. 1970. And the hit from this, I would say, is the scene where they do Thank You Very Much. And I'm going to do one version because there's two. There's one where the Ghost of Christmas Future is showing Scrooge what he thinks is an ode to Scrooge. Oh, he's such a great guy. And everybody's thanking him. What they're thanking him for is being dead because their dead is gone. And he doesn't realize that at first. So then it's cool that at the very end, when he does have his epiphany, his breakthrough, his change, he undergoes his change. He does it as well. And as a man in his age, the performance that he and this entire group of actors put on is incredible. And the set is huge. It's enormous. And they never, here's an interesting fact about this. They didn't cut the scenes. The cameras followed them as they went. So they did that in one stretch. Incredible. So let's go ahead and pop this one up. Of course, the thank you very much scene is what I'm talking about.
My friends, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I shall remember this moment until my dying day.
He has no idea. He's got no clue. They're walking out his coffin. Ba-bump. Just drop him.
May I say, in all humility, I have labored unceasingly all my life.
Perfect timing.
To be worthy of this moving demonstration of your feelings towards me.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of all the people who have assembled here, I would merely like to mention, if I may, that our unanimous attitude is one of lasting
Let's go ahead and like
gratitude
that.
for what our friend has done for us today. And therefore, I would simply like to say, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
For dying.
That's the nicest thing that anyone's ever done for me. I may sound awful Dutch, but my delight is such. I feel as if a losing war's been won for me. And if
And I'd love to play the whole thing, but let's just show them how they do it together in concert. It's really something.
to say thank you very, very, very much. Thank you very, very, very much.
And of course, he's oblivious to the fact that they are parading his casket to the cemetery where they will promptly just dump him in the hole. And it's hilarious. It really is. Well, extremely well done. And then at the end, like I said, he will actually lead them in that, which is just something for this guy at his age to do. I'm actually stunned this next one came in the position it did. And it's possible because of who he is. He's a controversial guy. So perhaps he screwed himself in the court of public opinion. I think he did a fantastic, fantastic job. And we're going to come back to him in a bit because it is very clear that he molded his version of Scrooge after somebody else. All right. And when we play that clip from that person, you're going to see that, and of course I'm talking about Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey absolutely took it from someone. Watch. Probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. This scared the hell out of my daughter, actually, when we first watched it. You remember that, Laura? It scared the bejesus out of my daughter, especially when mankind is my business. That comment was my business.
What do you want with me? Who are you?
Ask me who I was.
Who were you then?
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
Can you sit down?
Do it then.
You do not believe in me.
Boo. Boo. So yeah, they're gonna do that. What can you do? That's the one I'm worried about getting dinged with. They care so much about their, their work that they probably care more about getting some kind of rights to it than they do about somebody promoting it. But I'm actually really surprised that Jim Carrey's version. I thought Jim Carrey played a fantastic Ebenezer Scrooge. If you've ever watched how they did that, how they put that on, and by the way, he plays multiple characters in the movie. You got to give it to the guy. He's incredibly talented. When Marley's ghost does the part where he's like, mankind was my business, the common welfare, his jaw comes off. My daughter used to have a crap with that, and she couldn't stand it. So now she obviously gotten old, and we tease her every single time because that's just one of those things that families will put them through. This next one, again, we already started talking about it, but this is a classic and will always be a classic. And it's getting harder and harder to find it unless you subscribe to Disney Plus. And of course, I'm talking about Mickey's Christmas Carol. There is a 30th edition that was actually recently just made. But, the bottom line is the old school vintage look is I'm all about it. So I'm all about it. So this one came in and it's Alan Young, by the way, who plays Scrooge McDuck as Ebenezer Scrooge. That came in as number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Number 7. I would have thought it came in a little bit more. Let's just watch it real quick. Oh, this is a review of it. I don't want to see somebody's review. No reviews. Hold on. Are you not allowed to see it anymore? It got hard to find it on YouTube. This is the beginning of it, maybe. Yeah, it is. And if it is, that's good because I'd like to and get rid of it for now until that's done. But once we get to the beginning of it, come on. Let's go. Let's roll through. It's a review. There was something that went through at YouTube where it was hard to find this. You could find it on Disney Plus. I was trying to show you just the opening of it because there's another animated Christmas Carol where you could see they took that and Mickey's Christmas Carol, how it should have ended. I bet you that's twisted. All right, but you'll see there's another animated version. I was a little bit unsure because this animated version was done by somebody who also played Ebenezer Scrooge in a movie. I was unsure whether I should count them together or not, but in the end, it wouldn't have mattered. All right, and I'll just put it like that. But Patrick Stewart's, that one's next, did a version of A Christmas Carol in 1999. I'm not going to play a clip of it because I want to make sure we have a guest coming on today. There's a lot to talk about. I want to make sure that we have time for it. But yes, he did a version in 1999 that's actually quite good. And for somebody like Patrick Stewart, if you don't know who he is, come on, guys, Xavier from X-Men, it would be a little bit, unfair for me to say I would not have expected him to be that good of a Scrooge. He is in fact bald. It's like whoever views Ebenezer to be a bald guy. This one Laura hates, the one that beat Patrick Stewart. Laura hates it. I don't know why she hates it so much, but she does. All right. And we're going to play it just because she can't stand it. No offense, Laura. No offense. But yeah, I like it. I always thought it was great. I saw it in the movie theater in 1998, which my father was pissed about. It was completely inappropriate for me to be watching at that age, I think. But let's do it. All right, this is, of course, Bill Murray in Scrooge, 1988. Here's the trailer.
Workshop, and only Lee Majors can stop them. In the night the reindeer died.
You can't show that commercial. That thing looked like the Manson family Christmas special.
I think I'm way off base.
Yes, you're a tad off base, sir.
Frank Cross is more than the youngest network president in television history.
Call security, have them change his locks, and toss him out of the building.
Oh, he's fired?
It's Christmas.
Thank you. Call accounting. Stop his bonus. Oh, watch out.
He's a thoughtful boss,
Thanks, boys. Get the nurse.
a generous brother,
What did he give you last year?
I don't remember. A shower curtain. Excuse me, ma'am. I think you dropped something here.
and a true humanitarian.
I can't get the antlers glued onto this little guy. We tried crazy glue.
Have you tried Staple?
Have you tried Staples? Have you tried Staples? He says. So yeah, as Frank Cross, he plays an Ebenezer Scrooge-like character. And believe it or not, at this point on, from Bill Murray's version in Scrooge in 1988, from this point on, they were all really, really close. By the way, somebody mentioned Die Hard, which I saw was up on the screen. Die Hard actually got about 3 votes. It did. And which is, it's not that I put it on a list. It's just, it was so few, and I like it. I love it. I know what he's talking about. It's so few that, it was with like the plays or things that people saw that were, 1 or 2 here and there. 3. Die Hard got 3. I think it was 3 or 4 votes. All right. But this is a rare on-set moment. And I cannot believe, I had to go to Laura like, well, why is this doing so well? And she's like, look, it's a classic. It's a classic. And that, of course, we're talking about is the Muppets. Michael Caine plays Ebenezer Scrooge in a Muppet Christmas Carol that was put on in 1992. And the Muppets were up there, folks, with like an incredible, historic and incredible performances. And I had to go back and look at it. And you know what? People are right. It was good. Muppets Christmas Carol was really, really good. I'm like, I can't say a bad thing about it. It's different, but it's good. And here is actually Michael Caine talking about it. Let's show real quick. The love for the Muppets is really, really something. This is from an interview on December 10th, 1992. And it's Michael Caine talking about his performance of Ebenezer Scrooge on the Muppets. He's a great, great actor.
Of the Dickens classic.
We've tried to stay very faithful to the original story, Really, the only difference between this and the original is that the original was a book and this is a movie. And we have lots of frogs and pigs and chickens and rats playing the main parts.
I forgot they had interviews with everybody in this.
Script? Well, our script is so close to the original that kids will be able to come and see the movie and be able to do a book report later.
So look, you should never work with children and animals, they say, it's for actors, and Muppets are even worse, they're scene stealers. And the only thing that you have that can save you with the Muppets is reality, because that's what they do not have. It's the only thing they don't have. They have everything else in space.
What was it like working with Michael Caine as an actor? He's an Oscar-winning actor.
Mm-hmm. Well, after I gave him some tips, he was fine.
Michael Caine is fantastic, and I've learned so much from him about acting. Like how to get to the food trolley first, lunchtime.
The great thing about the Muppets and the script is that they're very irreverent about themselves. It's wonderful. I get to throw them out the door and kick them up in the air and everything, with the Scrooge. It's a wonderful thing.
Miss Piggy plays your wife in this film.
Yes, but I do want to emphasize this is only a movie. It's only a movie. We are not married.
That's what it says in public. In private, it's a very different thing. We made a private agreement, that in public, you could say that.
How does Miss Piggy relate to other actresses you worked with?
Well, Miss Piggy doesn't relate to any other actress whatsoever. No actress, no female exists for Miss Piggy, only men. Unfortunately, I'm a bit too old. Too bald.
Do you get to keep your wardrobe when the film is finished?
This? You think I'm going to be thrilled to keep this? I could go to Salvation Army and get this.
Oh my God!
Our money here, kid.
Oh my God!
I did read the script. Yes.
Did you cry?
Well, a little bit. As soon as I realized I had such a small part, actually, I did cry just a few tears, and then I got over it and reported to work on the first day.
I never ever saw myself as Scrooge, but I'm getting into the part. I've taken my wife's credit card away.
What is the message of A Christmas Carol to you?
The message to me is no matter how bad things are or people are, they can change. You can change. Just work on it.
Yup. I think Michael Caine got the point of the story. He said that absolutely perfectly. And I got to tell you, after again, I was like, I kind of forgot. And I was like, what on earth are people talking about? And after looking at it, it's really good. And somebody said in the comment chat, he played that part as serious as a heart attack. He did. He did fantastic. I love Michael Caine. He's a great actor. But there is no doubt that The Muppets was tied with some of these classics. They were number 4, and I'm telling you, it's a real, or really technically number 3. And it's a really close number 3. And why am I saying technically? You're going to find out in a second. I don't want to blow the ending here. All right. But the next one is one of my personal favorites without a doubt. And I think should I play there's a clip. That's a really good clip. It's a powerful clip. Or I could play the trailer. Oof. It's tough. That's tough. Let's do the trailer. Let's do the trailer because it's longer. There's a final scene, but it's 9 minutes long, and I don't want to do the final scene. We could do the what day is it part. Tough. Yeah, let's do the what day is it. Let's do what day is. Yeah, okay. And of course, what I'm talking about, folks, is the 1984 version of A Christmas Carol played by one of in my opinion, one of the best actors ever, George C. Scott. And if it's either number, you could say it's either number 2 or you could say it's number 3, depending. It's not number. I guess it's not fair to say number 3. Laura and I were really struggling with what to do with these because this guy had multiple versions of his performances of Scrooge. All right, but for the meantime, this is George C. Scott, and there are few that got me personally as emotional as as George C. Scott got me. He was fantastic. Oh, I do. That is what day is it? That's good.
Daylight. But what day? Hello, you there, boy.
Me, sir?
Yes, you, my good fellow. What day is today?
Today? Why, it's Christmas Day, of course.
Christmas Day. I haven't missed it. The spirits did it all in one night. Well, they can do anything they like. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow.
Hello.
Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one, on the corner?
I should hope I did.
Intelligent boy, remarkable boy. Do you know if they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging there?
What? The one as big as me?
Delightful boy. Pleasure talking to you. Yes, the one as big as you.
It's hanging there now.
Well, go and buy it. Yes, go and buy it and bring them round so that I may tell them where to deliver it. Come back with the man, I'll give you a shilling. Come back in less than 5 minutes, I'll give you half a crown. I must dress myself. So much to do. I don't want to lose any time. I was light as a feather. I'm as happy as an angel. I'm as merry as a schoolboy. I'm as giddy as a drunken man. Merry Christmas to everybody, and a Happy New Year to the world!
Fantastic. Just fantastic. Yeah, so that one, I'll tell you, it was so close. That one got 2 votes less than the winner. 2 votes. It was really close. And by the way, the Muppets got 4 votes less than George C. Scott. So holy crap. I mean, incredible, incredible, incredible. You know, before we announce the winner, which movie is closest to the book? Does anybody know? That's a really good question. I've read the book. I try to encourage my kids to read the actual book. And I got to tell you, Disney's A Christmas Carol is very, very, very close. Jim Carrey made it extremely close to the book as far as the dialogue and the order in which things go. An American Christmas Carol was on the list, actually. But I'm going in order, Marty. I'll show you guys the list of the poll, and I'll put it out after. But if you missed it, you could have seen it on social media. I tweeted it out. But it's just, people, I didn't want to give specific examples. I wanted people to tell me because I didn't want to miss anybody. And also I wanted to give people a chance to give us examples if they saw something like on Broadway or something, or, wherever that we wanted to hear from that to see. So this is I know that people are going to be pissed if I show this clip of this movie because there is a colorized version and there is the original. And I'm telling you right now, the vast majority of the people who made this number one would rather see a clip, even if it's a trailer, of the original, which is, of course, black and white. And there's a couple, there's a couple I think I could show here because it is so good. It really is. This one's 3 minutes, something like that. And then now I can explain why it was like a little bit of a tricky thing. What do I do if somebody votes for? Because really what I want to know is, who do you think played Scrooge the best? But also, which movie do you think is the best? And the book it's not light reading, Marty. So if you're not a big reader, then I would encourage everybody to read it, because then you'll understand who got who got the closest. Now, that being said, somebody in the comment section obviously already knows which one's coming and they say that one's closest to the book. And that's why I said that we were going to come back to Jim Carrey, because if you watch the original film of this one, which beat George C. Scott alone by 2 votes, if you watch the original and then his animated version, which was later done about 20 years later in 1970. Is it 70 or 70? Oh, 20 years later on the dot, 1971. Then you'll see how Jim Carrey really did model himself off of who's number one, which I'm sure most people know by now, is Alistair Sim, who played Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol in 1951. And it's good. It's really good. Let's do the trailer. This way I don't give anybody any, crappy black and white or redone of the original black and white. All right, so here we go. Whoops, it's going on me without me wanting to go. All right, so I can hear it, you can't. And then I'm going to show you the animation, which got several votes in and of itself. And I didn't even know that was on YouTube. It's so old, and it's kind of rare. Nobody really knows that one. But indeed, I found it on YouTube, and it is, as Laura and I were reviewing it, there is no doubt that's what Jim Carrey was doing. He was remaking Alistair Sim, especially in the remake. So here we go. Let's play it up. Bang. This is the trailer. It's just a trailer of the Christmas Carol. It's old school. Look at how old school that is. Come on, come on, come on. Get to the good stuff. Ow. That hurts in my ear.
I can't pay you, sir. I'm not surprised. Not unless you give me more time. Did I ask you for more time to lend you the money? Oh, no, sir. Then why should you ask me for more time to pay it back?
Hard and sharp as flint he was. You asked Bob Cratchit about him. This timid and intimidated little clerk is portrayed by Mervyn John. Mrs. Cratchit by Hermione Baddeley. The little lame boy, the great-hearted Tiny Tim, is played by Glyn Dearman. Michael Hordern gives a spirited portrayal of Jacob Marley, the ghost who changes Scrooge from sinner to saint. Co-starring with Alistair Sim in delightful character roles are Jack Warner and Kathleen Harrison.
Don't be violent, Mr. Scrooge, so you forced me to scream for the beagle.
The beetle, madam. A thief for the beetle.
A guinea? Here, what for?
I love the classics. I love Mickey too. It's Mickey or bust, huh?
Yeah. I called Greg.
You want to recount?
I demand a recount. Mm-mm.
And there it is. And I'll tell you, let's see if I can actually find it. Okay. Alistair Sim in 1971 did this animated version, and I bet I can find it because somebody just sent it to me. So here it is. And let's show it real quick. And when we do, let's full screen this puppy. Oh, nobody cares about your ads. It's like you're getting free advertising. Here we go. Listen to him, and then you will see what I'm talking about with Jim Carrey. Okay? The very opening is going to sound familiar if you've seen Jim Carrey. Right? They even started with the same song. Now let's get serious. You'll notice the absence of the Marley funeral scene.
London. The time, 1843. The season, that of jollity, of festivity and charity, holly and berries and goodwill to all men, with perhaps one exception. And it is with this exception that we are concerned in our story. The exception is Ebenezer Scrooge.
Listen to the tones in his voice. And if you've seen Carrey's version, it's going to ring true. You'll hear it.
A Merry Christmas, Uncle. God save you. Humbug. Christmas a humbug, Uncle? You don't mean that, I'm sure.
Oh, but I do. Merry Christmas? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough.
Well, come then. What reason have you to be morose? You're rich enough.
Bah! Humbug.
Don't be cross, Uncle.
What else can I be? Out upon a Merry Christmas. If I could work my will, every idiot who goes back with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart.
Uncle!
Boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. So you could see very clearly, if you have ever seen both of them, you can see very clearly that Jim Carrey modeled his Ebenezer Scrooge off of Alistair Sim, who won. So congratulations to the late Alistair Sim. He won, and it was close. Really, really close. If you don't count that animated version, then he beat out George C. Scott by 2 votes. 2 votes. If you count that animated version, which had a few, it was like 5 or 3 or something, then it's a little bit more. We decided that it really wasn't fair to count it the same for, it was an undue advantage for Alistair Sim because people were citing specifically the 1951 version. Alistair Sim is the best Scrooge, 1951. And I love Jim Carrey's version. I do. And now I think I know why, because when you really, well, not now, but when you compare them, you can see that he tried to do what Alistair Sim tried to do, which was make it as true, or the director, to make it as true to the book as he could, but also, Snowman said, I feel terrible. I would have been a George C. Scott vote. And there are people, no doubt, that didn't get to take it, that would have voted for. Every time we saw George C. Scott pulling closer, every time there would be like 3 or 4 that would come in for Alistair Sims. So even though it ended close, it was very clear advantage. Toward the end there, the last day, it looked like Bill Murray was really making a run. The Muppets were always bam, 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 right there. And I'm like, Muppets Christmas Carol, what? And I had forgotten. It's been years since I've seen it. And I had to go back and see that that Michael Caine put on a real performance there. And all those Muppets did an incredible job. And Marty, I got to tell you, which one, if I had the chance, I can only watch one this year, then it's either going to be Alistair Sim or Jim Carrey, in my opinion. And I'm with Laura. I love Mickey. I love Mickey's Christmas Carol. And when you have kids, you relive the memories of yourself and your childhood. So it's beautiful. It's a magic, But at the end of the day, you gotta give it to Jim Carrey that he did do a really, really fantastic job. All right, we're gonna go do our reads real quick. When we come back, we're gonna talk Twitter. We're gonna talk Trump with our guest. All right, and we're gonna talk about I'm just not. Well, I'm gonna save that till after the break. All right, so real quick word from the sponsors, which we want to thank, because without this, of course, without you guys, of course, every Christmas season, we have to be thankful for something. And here comes my son. Hi, Roman.
Come here.
Why don't you go watch Mickey's Christmas Carol, Robo?
Come.
You want to go see Mickey's Christmas Carol? While Daddy does his job? Take it. Go ahead, it's yours. He's going to hit the thing. There it goes. All right, down the read. The food shortages could be coming even in the U.S. Don't you doubt it for a second. By the way, nice CPI report this week. Drought, inflation, which is not falling sustainably, and even new policies are pushing America's food supply near its breaking point. And that's why survival food is more important than ever. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food kits for you and your family, like Laura and I have done for ours today. This is not ordinary food. We're talking good for 25 years, super survival food that's hand-packed right in a family-owned facility in the U.S. of A. The kits are compact, they're sturdy, water-resistant, light-resistant, and they stack very easily. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinners, and you can make them in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. Go to 4patriots.com/TPP to get your 3-month survival kit. And with it, you'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus 10 free gifts and free shipping. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities to support our veterans and their families. Just go to 4patriots.com/TPP to build your own stockpile today. And by the way, when you do, if you're there and you're browsing their exceptional website with a whole lot of super goodies like this right here, by the way, the 72-hour one, which is for practice, for us, we use stuff like that for practice to train up the kids. Don't forget to use the promo code TPP10. That's TPP, like the People's Pundit, TPP10 to get 10% off your order site-wide on whatever that your little heart desires. All right. And by the way, keep the pictures coming. I love when I see pictures. I just got the generator, Rich. Thanks for the discount code. I just grabbed the 3-month survival kit for my so-and-so as a Christmas gift. I love getting stuff like that. So keep them coming. All right. While we're on the financial situation and the economic news, which was, look, jobless claims were better this month, but or this week. They were lower than expected, but there can be a lot of reasons for that. Whereas, I hate to say it, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter, but I put it out. Everything else was not good this week. The Philadelphia Fed Manufacturing Index cratered more than 13. They expected it to bounce back not out of contraction. Some did, but the consensus was around -4. It was -13 plus. It's been negative, and meaning in contraction. It is shrinking. It is recession. It's contraction. All right. I don't want to confused too many people. But the bottom line is, in the last 5 out of 6 months before this report, it had been in contraction territory. Now, with this report, it's negative. It has been negative 6 out of the last 7 months. So basically half a year. Half the year of 2020, the Philadelphia Fed Manufacturing Index was negative. You know, it's interesting. Why does that matter? Well, think about Pennsylvania. They were told, if you like your goods producing sector, you better be very careful on what you do and who you vote for. Well, you've been warned. There's no other way to put it. New York, the Empire State Manufacturing Index, completely cratered. Industrial production sucked. The capacity utilization rate declined again. It's bad news across the board this week. Nice try spinning it, though. It was a hell of a try. And look, the last time the economy looked like this, the market tanked 50%. The dollar lost 46% of its value, and the price of oil quadrupled. Yet, while the U.S. economy collapsed and inflation ran through the roof, gold shot up 1,300%. Silver, which I like better, rocketed 2,400%. So if history repeats itself, we could see this happen again. By the way, platinum too, folks, platinum. Can you afford to miss out on what could be the biggest gold and silver and platinum boom of our generation? Nope. That's why I want you to visit tpplikesgold.com, because when you do, you'll not only get the chance to protect your retirement savings with gold and silver and precious metals. You can get up to 10 grand or more in free silver just for doing it. It's a rare opportunity, so don't miss out on it. Protect your retirement savings. Go to tpplikesgold.com. That's tpplikesgold.com. All right, now I want to bring in my guest, who is an author and he's an author, also a lawyer by profession, which I think is noteworthy or it's worthy of mention, because I'm not a huge fan of media books. You know, like, this is fake news, that's fake news. Look how bad the media is here. What I love about how Daniel Street handles his work is that he prosecutes the case he's making. It is so thorough, and he has a series of books now on fake news that really just followed the former president everywhere he went. And when you read these books, there's so much of it, you forget some of these stories. But Daniel didn't forget them, and I want to bring him on now if he's ready. Daniel, thanks for joining us. We've been trying to have you on for a while now to talk about the news that's been going on, and we're going to talk about that today, but also the books that you have written about the topic I was just discussing. And I just don't see anybody else make such a thorough case. And there's some other ones out there who have done a good, decent job. You know, it's just, they're written so unserious, and yours are not. And so thanks for coming on.
Hey, look, I appreciate you having me on, Rich. And I appreciate you working so hard to have me on, because you tried to have me on 2 or 3 times, and one time I couldn't do it, and then one time I had technical difficulties on my end. So I really appreciate it, and I appreciate what you had to say about the books, because you were kind of gracious enough to do an editorial review for volume 1 of the Fake News Exposed About Trump series, and it was just a ringing endorsement, and I appreciate it. I have to tell you, I'm a big fan of yours. I followed you since the 2016 election. And I mentioned to you before that there's a lot of fake news in the polling industry. And you're like a beacon of light in the polling industry. And I really appreciate your work. And look, it's one of those industries that, in my opinion, there's more misinformation than there is good information.
Yeah,
and we see it every time there's an important election. Every time we just saw it. But if Donald Trump's on the ballot, the misinformation is just on blast in polling, and it winds up being more propaganda than anything else. So when there's somebody like you, and you're at the top of a very short list, there's only 3 or 4 other people who, in my opinion anyway, and I've studied it extensively, are just calling balls and strikes. And doing it accurately. So it's a pleasure to be here. I've actually watched probably, I think you're on episode 309, maybe. I haven't watched.
Yeah.
I've watched
really? Wow.
And,
it happened so quick, Daniel. It happened so quick. All of us, I remember when we did 300, I was like, really? Already? And then I remember 200. And you remember those milestone episodes, where you're like, I have really dedicated 2 hours times 309. You know, it's something else. But yeah, on the review that I did, I got to tell you, it was my pleasure because I couldn't put that book down. I forgot about so many of these stories that you documented, and it's when you read any of them, but that one specifically was because it's the first. When you read them, you're just like, how could anybody believe a damn word these people say ever again? It's so bad. It is. It's way worse when you review it in hindsight the way you did. And then what I love about what you do is you also explain how the story develops and collapses, but that they don't care. They just go through that process. And it's like, it has to make you conclude. You can't conclude anything else. That they're after that 24 to 48 hour damaging time period. They don't care how bad or inaccurate their reporting was or how much it might hurt somebody, really forever. You could kill somebody doing this. I mean, look at
that.
Go ahead.
There have been efforts by leftists who were influenced by fake news to kill people. The attack on the congressional baseball game a couple years ago, where one of my state Louisiana congressman, Steve Scalise, was seriously injured and wounded. The guy who perpetrated that was a Bernie Sanders campaign worker. Now, he was low on the totem pole, of course, but he had been motivated by fake news. And so fake news is dangerous, and it's dangerous in a number of ways. And Rich, one of the issues that you just touched on, I started out, I'm just following these stories, and I see so many, and it's just vociferous, just vitriolic fake news. And then the GOP establishment piled in on it. And I started collecting these stories, and I ultimately decided to turn it into a book. There's 83 fake news stories in the 3 volumes combined. And then each volume comes with a free book, a free chapter. So, and then there's a triple ebook. So I did a free chapter for that. So there's 87 chapters. There's 87 stories that are absolute misinformation. And I get told all the time by people who read them, they're like, man, I totally forgot about that. Because I go all the way back right after Trump came out and announced in 2015 and all the way through until this year. And it's one story after another. And I think what differentiates fake news in the era of Trump from the fake news of the past, because let me back up just for a minute. I came of age in the 80s. I idolized President Reagan. And I knew when I was a teenager that the media was unfair to Ronald Reagan. So there's nothing new about that. You might remember back in when Bush 41 ran for president in 88, there were T-shirts that had the CBS News logo that said "Rather biased," making fun of Dan Rather because he was biased. So, there's nothing new about it. But what's different about it in the Trump era is that during Trump's administration, fake news was used to hinder and impair the ability of Donald Trump and his administration to govern this country. And it was used to initiate bogus investigations and to result in process crimes or prosecutions for process crimes for people who didn't do anything wrong. And I can elaborate on all of that. But that, at least in my lifetime, was a sea change in the use of fake news. So it goes all the way. Look, you could talk about Russia collusion. We could have a 3-hour discussion about Russia collusion and just scratch the surface of it. But obviously that was used to foment a phony investigation of the president and to hamstring his administration. But do you remember right at the beginning of the Trump administration, President Trump had a phone call with the president of Mexico, and the media reported that President Trump had threatened to invade Mexico. They even had quotes. You might remember, there's some bad hombres down in Mexico. I might have to send.
That's right. Steve Cortez still to this day always uses that phrase, bad hombres. That's what he's referring to. I mean, this is crazy. It's just absolutely nuts that how some of the story about Prague, all of that was, and you're a lawyer. So, looking at the difference, like you said, there really was a difference between what happened under Trump and what had always happened to, you remember how George Herbert Walker Bush was, I think it was ABC during the Dukakis campaign. He had gotten into a spat during an interview because they were biased and he called them out for bias. And it was a great moment for him. I mean, it really galvanized Republicans when he did that. But this is not the same thing.
No. Yeah. And look, what would happen is these phony leaks, phony quotes. Look, phony quotes and misrepresentations about phone calls got Donald Trump impeached. And totally bogus and made up. Then, you remember when Donald Trump supposedly gave classified intelligence that exposed our sources and methods to the Russian ambassador and the Russian foreign minister in the Oval Office. That was all based off anonymous quotes. Every time Donald Trump turned around during his administration, there were stories that were supposedly leaks from people who were in the know about what Donald Trump said or did. He had to drop everything he's doing. His administration had to drop what they were doing, and the leaders of foreign governments would have to drop what they were doing, like in the invade Mexico nonsense. So this was used to hamstring the Trump administration. All of that's covered in the books, but I think, obviously, Rich, I have an ulterior motive. I'd like to sell about 3 million copies of every volume and retire, right? But
kidding.
The reality is I'd like for enough people to get this information because we can defang and neutralize fake news if enough people know what the truth is.
If they knew it. That's right, Daniel, if they knew it. So how much damage did somebody like Natasha Bertrand do when it came to Russia collusion, right? And she got basically promoted for it. Let's be real. I mean, she didn't get, she didn't get, ridiculed or censured of some kind. She didn't lose her job. In fact, Glenn Greenwald, this is something I want to get your, I'm going to put it up on the screen because Glenn Greenwald just tweeted something a couple hours ago that is exactly a perfect example of this. This had to do with the Hunter Biden laptop because it's not just they hindered his administration and his agenda and his ability to govern as a duly elected president using this fake news. Right. But also now we know that they have interfered with 2 different elections doing this as well. I mean, without a doubt that one of the things that really differed in public polling and when doing my work between 16 and 20 were the percentages of people who were aware of some of this stuff being fake. So the Hillary Clinton email scandal, if you asked anybody in the battleground states, are you watching it closely? Are you aware of it? Number one, are you watching it closely? The idea that it was fake news was not even a question. Of course it was real. People knew WikiLeaks was real. It was widely known, and it was in the 90s. So, because we did ask people that, are you aware of this story, that story, pay for play, whatever. And 95% were like, yup, we know about it. In 2020, it was not close to that. Like if 75% in the state of Wisconsin knew about the Hunter Biden story, that was a lot. And then you had the matter of them lying through reporters like Natasha Bertrand, telling people it's Russian disinformation. And now here we have this. And Glenn Greenwald says, rightfully, the worst, most egregious, the most nefarious official U.S. disinformation campaign in years was the pre-election CIA lie that the authentic Biden emails were Russian disinformation. It was led by liberal outlets, CNN, Politico, Natasha Bertrand, HuffPost, Mother Jones, and The Intercept, which, by the way, is a paper he left and helped to found. And he left it because of this crap. And interestingly enough, if you read this, why is Glenn even bringing this up? Because if you read his threads, he is referring to what is now known, that Natasha Bertrand was told this was not Russian disinformation. And yet they still took this crap because they had a group of individuals with an agenda. They still took this crap, the FBI, the CIA. They wanted to lie to the American public. They did not want a repeat of 16, which is, a lot of us don't like Trump, but he's competent. if you pitted him against another Hillary Clinton-like figure, and I think Biden benefited from people thinking he was a decent guy, right? Remember the decency campaign? They were desperate to keep that information from the public, because if it's just another pay-for-play Washington scumbag, then we'd rather vote for Donald Trump. You know, and that's really what it comes down to. And let me just give a shout out to Norm. He had his wisdom teeth pulled and he had to leave before. Norm, when you watch this, I hope you feel better. All right. And Merry Christmas to you if we don't, you know, if we don't see you until then. But yeah, I mean, they went full core press to keep this out of reach of the American public, because they were terrified that it was going to be Hillary Clinton all over again. And you know, I don't think, you know, some of that stuff in 16 that was released in October, I don't think it was the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean, when I look back at my polling, it was there the whole time. People just didn't like Hillary, man. And they knew those stories just confirmed what they suspected about her. So it was really bad. But with Joe Biden, it would have been an introduction to them, Dan. You know, that could have been it for him. COVID or no COVID.
An important distinction between Clinton and Hillary Clinton and Biden is there's a widespread view by particularly Republicans and anybody from the center right that Hillary Clinton was compromised, corrupt type person. And, you know, Biden, the knock on Biden going into the 2020 election was a lot. It wasn't about corruption, you know, and that's where the Hunter Biden laptop story would hurt Biden. You know, Biden, everybody knew Biden's kind of gaffe prone, and he says these really kind of racist things from the 1950s that only Democrats get a passport. You know, Republicans don't get a passport. But you know, Rich, Volume 1 I cover in Volume 1. There's an entire chapter about the Hunter laptop story.
Yep.
And it's really, we know a lot more now than we did then, but even then, even when the story first came out, it was not misinformation or disinformation. And it's one of that particular issue is one of, in my opinion, one of the darkest moments in media, in the history of media. And I'll tell you why, because if you look back at what those 51 lying former intelligence officials who wrote the declaration about the Hunter laptop story, they didn't say it was disinformation. They said it was a Russian information campaign. It had the earmarks and the hallmarks of a Russian information campaign. Not that it was lies, that it was true, but it was being promoted at the time, they thought, in their opinion, by Russia to try to make Biden look bad. And they knew that the media would take Russian information campaign and recast that into Russian disinformation. So the whole thing from top to bottom was really a smear campaign and against the truth story. And what we know now is that really rogue elements in the federal government and social media, I guess we wouldn't say they're rogue elements in social media and big tech, all conspired about that, even though they knew what the truth was. You know, even the attorney general. That's what I'm. Yeah.
Go ahead. No, finish.
Said this was almost election interference. You can imagine how bad it had to be for him to say that. Of course, he wouldn't say anything publicly at the time because he was too much of a GOP establishment type, and they all wanted, really, truthfully, to get rid of Trump anyway. So
that's right.
The Hunter Biden laptop misinformation campaign that was led by Politico, waged by everybody in the fake news media, everybody in legacy media jumped on that. And then we know the New York Post, which is the oldest weekly in the history of this country, got locked out of social media social media accounts for a couple of weeks because of the story. And the story was true. And so,
one, that's what I'm talking about. What you just did right there, just keeping the receipts the way you do in these books. That's what I'm talking about. You may forget as time goes on how these stories actually played out. And they didn't start. Now we know what we know, right? And if the narrative is cast the way it is, but if you got to be Dan to go back and look through all of these headlines to see how they roll these things out, because now we say immediately it's disinformation. But in fact, if you're researching it like he did for these books, you'll see that's not what what the media did. They did that. The same thing, and we used to cover this on People's Pundit Daily, which I miss doing, but Google, we're going to talk about big tech censorship in a second. But I remember this story we did the first during his term. And it's like these 4 lies to turn Trump into a racist. And the number one, I mean, they did it the moment the guy came down the escalator, Dan. He never said all Mexicans are rapists and murderers. He never said that. One of the worst, they completely fabricated that. Another one was, speaking of Hunter, from Yahoo News. Trump never said that he supported this Muslim. He wanted a Muslim registry put together. That was Hunter at Yahoo News who made a suggestion like that. And then he wrote the headline, "Trump is open to all ideas to prevent radical Islamic attacks." Then CNN reposted that article and said, "Trump wants Muslim registry." I mean, it was like, what? And then, of course, one of the worst ones ever, which was the Charlottesville hoax. The white supremacists are very fine people, which I know you know all about.
Yeah, that's the first chapter of volume 2. It's it's the worst. It's one of the worst media lies. And what really troubles me about the whole Charlottesville very fine people lie is Joe Biden claims that what Donald Trump said about Charlottesville is what prompted Joe Biden to run for president. Now, everybody knows that's not true. That, Joe Biden's wanted to be president for 30 years. But to claim that a misrepresentation about what somebody said is why what's prompted you to run for president is just really balderdash. The reality is, and I cover it in that chapter of the second volume of Fake News Exposed about Trump, and talk about what actually happened in Charlottesville and what President Trump actually said. He has routinely, repeatedly, relentlessly rejected, repudiated racism of all kinds, and he did it then. And the only thing, when he said there were some very fine people at Charlottesville, his comments reflect this. He was talking about, he said the original protests were people who didn't want Robert E. Lee's statue taken down.
Yes.
And he said, some of those are fine people and y'all have really treated them horribly bad. And he was right. And they took that to say that he was talking about all these skinheads or something. It was just insanity. And you know what, Rich, though, you pointed out something earlier and I wanted to elaborate on. You're talking about how the fake news media, they don't ever get disciplined for any of this. And
nope.
And that's one of the hallmarks of fake news. You take Maggie Haberman at the New York Times, who has told countless lies, and she doesn't get a reprimand, not a public reprimand. She doesn't get any kind of discipline whatsoever. And that's one of the hallmarks of fake news. And the reason for it is, the reason they don't get disciplined is because in all probability is in most cases, it's mission accomplished.
That's right.
That's what they were trying to do.
Look at this example right here, Daniel. So, and this is what I want to use this to pivot to exactly what you're talking about. Now they are having some repercussions, but it's not their employer. It's Elon Musk. And he has been removing some people from Twitter who he views to be pushers of disinformation. And they're saying, like Aaron Rupar is saying, I don't know what I did, right? All he does all day is dox people. And so doxing I can see. So if you point out somebody, attacks are attacks. This is a contact sport. I get attacked all the time. There are things people are never going to let go, and it's really rather, I don't know the word. It's just in low character attacks. If they can't attack your work, they try to attack you personally. And he's perfect for that. That guy is exactly that guy. I'm sure that there will be a recent release soon. But Ben Collins, who again with Glenn Greenwald, this is Ian Miles Chong here. But Ben Collins has been exposed by Glenn Greenwald over and over again as telling lies on MSNBC. He constantly goes up there and spouts deep state talking points that he has been given and funneled to give to the American public, lies of the highest order. And yet MSNBC never takes him off the air. NBC News never reprimands him. He has been suspended at NBC News, but it's not for the myriad fake news headlines that he has driven. It is because of his unprofessional attacks on Elon Musk. So he went too far, like acting like the establishment doesn't want you to act. He like dipped into Keith Olbermann territory, so they suspended him over it. But these other people are finally, and I hate to say this because I like to be consistent, man. I really do. And if there is no example for some of these journalists of putting someone in danger or something, then I don't want them suspended either. I don't, just the way they came after me simply because they didn't like what I said, not because it's not true. I never want that to happen to anybody. I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. I mean, we disagree. A disagreement is not a valid reason to investigate someone, to deperson someone. That disagreement is part of self-governing societies, public discourse, right. This is unbelievable. This is exactly what you're talking about. He's not being reprimanded for lying all the time, for fake news all the time. He's being reprimanded for like a etiquette issue. This is crazy, man.
Well, really off the top of my head, thinking about the 87 chapters that I've written for the books about fake news, off the top of my head, I can only think of a couple of instances where the fake news resulted in any sort of discipline. Brian Ross got he got reprimanded. He got suspended for the story about, supposedly Mike Flynn was going to tell the special counsel or something that he had talked to the Russians or been told to talk to the Russians during the campaign or something. I forget exactly.
Right.
But he was suspended.
Oh, Flynn was going to flip. That's what it was. Flynn was going to flip. Yep.
It's actually, it's covered. I covered in volume 1, I believe. But I mean, that's the exception. Of those 87 chapters, there are 2. There's another couple of journalists with CNN who were suspended over a misinformation, over a report that turned out to be incorrect. All the rest of them, there's absolutely no indication that anybody got publicly anyway chastised, reprimanded, suspended, disciplined in any way. And in fact, in the Russian collusion nonsense, several people got Pulitzer Prizes for what were really misinformation stories. I mean, that were public reports that were totally wrong. And I think what gets lost, I think the one thing that frustrates me really to no end about the Russia collusion nonsense, there are people walking around in this country, and most of them are leftist Democrats who believe that whole cock and bull story about Russia collusion. But what really frustrates me about that is that
in Charlottesville, I mean, they'll believe that, Dan, until the cows come home.
Well, Russia collusion was cooked up for the most part by the Hillary Clinton campaign, the Democrat National Committee. They cooked it up. They paid the Clinton campaign paid their attorneys at Perkins Coie $1 million to retain Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS, and Glenn Simpson then turned around and he went and hired Christopher Steele, and Christopher Steele cooked up the Steele dossier. Glenn Simpson was responsible for or at least in part, for the Alpha Bank Trump Tower just secret server balderdash. And the Russian lawyer that set up the Trump Tower meeting was a contractor with Fusion GPS and met with Glenn Simpson the day before and the day after. Right. And we still have people going on television talking about Russia collusion that don't give the background that the Clintons and the Democrats conjured it. It's look, that's why it's so important if you read the books and you go back and you're going through all these stories, you have the reference. Look, last week or week before last, I had somebody hit me with President Trump threatened to invade Mexico, and I carry these books around in my car, And I said, no. And I flipped to the chapter here. Don't take my word for it. Read it for yourself. Here's the quotes. Here's the references. Here's the citations. This is what the truth is. if we get that information to enough people's hands, we can totally defang fake news. But the one thing I did want to mention, because sometimes, Rich, it seems so overwhelming. You've got all the big legacy media outlets, ABC, NBC, CBS, you got MSNBC, CNN, to a large extent, I'm sad to say, Fox News, and print media, Gannett News Services, New York Times, Washington Post, all just pumping out fake news endlessly. And it seems overwhelming. But
yeah, Fox is no exception to that. Fox is no exception to that anymore. And that's why, and by the way, you hit everybody who deserves it in these books. That's another thing. It's not like you're just going after, it just so happens that they're the bigger purveyors of it, right? It's just that, but Fox is not exempt. Fox is all in on stopping Donald Trump again. They are all in on it. And I mean, look, this is something I want to throw at you. I mean, you've looked at this probably more than anybody. The only thing that can be done, right? And see if you agree with this. The only thing that can be done, if we want to stay true to being free speech, pro-free speech, and pro-free society, the only thing that can be done is to spread awareness that these people are not credible. Because I think, the credibility of the cartel is what gives them power. And we can't stop them, from publishing lies. We can't, right? I mean, it's not American.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So and look, I tell everybody, because I routinely get asked, who's the worst? Who's the worst purveyor of misinformation? And in my opinion, it's without any doubt, it's the New York Times. I call the New York Times, I always say they are the undisputed, undefeated world heavyweight 600-pound gorilla of fake news. World heavyweight champion and 600-pound gorilla of fake news. So if you see, this is one way to blunt it, is for people to say, hey, that's from the New York Times. And if it's from the New York Times and it's about Trump, it's probably misinformation, frankly.
It's probably fake.
But listen, look, Rich, you covered this. You actually covered this in an article you wrote. I think it was for the New York Post. I might be wrong about that. In 2019, you wrote an article about how so many of the people in polling are leftists, and they don't believe in the things that middle America believes in. That's true in the fake news media as well. And just to give you an illustration, if you remember back during 2020, a Republican U.S. Senator from Arkansas, Tom Cotton, the New York Times published an op-ed by Tom Cotton where he said, look, we need to put an end to all these BLM riots. Now, we know the BLM riots resulted in a couple of $1 billion, according to some estimates, in damage. People were injured, businesses burned down, all sorts of things. And Tom Cotton writes this op-ed. It gets published in the New York Times. And the New York Times, the staff at the New York Times responded so negatively to it that the editor of the opinion page he resigned, but he was resigned because he had to. So these people are so far to the left that they won't tolerate the publication of the opinion of a sitting U.S. senator in their opinion editorial.
Incredible.
Page. All right.
Incredible.
That's the people who are deciding what gets published in the New York Times. So and look, if we could take that away, think of how much influence this has. You talk about this all the time when it comes to elections. It's called the media handicap.
Yeah.
Right? And every Republican has to overcome these in-kind campaign contributions from fake news media, because they're going to promote Democrats and suppress any information that's unfavorable to a Democrat candidate. And it happens over and over again. And the only time there's really an exception to it, in my opinion at least, and in my experience, is when when the Democrats are running for a Democrat nomination, the media might be a little even-handed because they don't really care necessarily which Democrat gets the nod. But once there's a Democrat anointed, whether it's for the Senate, for the presidency, for a governor's race, whatever, the misinformation starts. And
it all changes, right?
The truth gets suppressed.
And that's why, it bothers me about some of these, because eventually we're going to need to convince the other side, that this happens. It's like, And this is why I'm going to start to pivot to talking about things more like, why are human beings, or why are we? And some societies are different than others, but we're very clearly a myth-believing society. And it's very difficult for us, especially those among us that we consider to be educated. It's very difficult for us to admit that we've been duped. We believe something we wanted to believe. So it's, some people call it illusory truth effect, but it really goes a lot further than this. I mean, it's just a slew of cognitive biases that we're subjecting ourselves to and falling prey to. And we have got to penetrate that, because it's, it's going to be used against them eventually. And I would argue it already has. So this idea that, there are never widespread election interference or issues with other things, and I'm trying to be careful here. If you're a Bernie supporter, you should be just as mad as a Trump supporter, because they did this to him. There was an FBI indictment, folks, and Bernie Sanders was a victim of that out of Philadelphia. He had, if you remember, he had just won Michigan in a shocker over Hillary Clinton when the poll said he was going to go down double digits. And then they were moving into the rest of the Rust Belt, Ohio and Pennsylvania. And nobody really believed that, he could prevail in Ohio, but maybe in Pennsylvania, there's enough rural working vote. They screwed him. I mean, the FBI indictment says that those election judges were totally corrupt. And then look at what they did to him in Iowa in 2020. And speaking of fake news, CNN, and they got, and sadly, Ann Seltzer, I've had a lot of respect for as a pollster in my industry. And if I was her, I would have went to the mat over that poll that they spiked before the Iowa caucuses in 2020. There was nothing wrong. Even Patrick Murray at Monmouth University, he's the director of the Monmouth poll, even he agreed with me that when something that they claim happens during field work, maybe one or two people were read a script that might have cut off somebody. So that particular interviewer during that period, their interviews just don't count. And you just keep polling, Dan. I mean, it's still the principles of randomization are not out the window because you screwed up a couple interviews. And yet she spiked her whole poll. And we all know why that was. They wanted the illusion that Pete Buttigieg was doing better than he was, that he could possibly win, and he wasn't doing as well in that poll as they suspected, and Biden was in fourth place, so they spiked it. And then when all of that happened and the caucus occurred, the next day, because the Iowa poll is always right before the caucus, they used those tactics, we'll just say those tactics, to misallocate state delegate equivalents to Pete Buttigieg that he never should have been awarded. And it later got fixed, and we now know Bernie Sanders won the Iowa caucus, but what's the word I'm looking for? Deprived him of that momentum that you get coming off of a win. And he was supposed to go in and cruise through New Hampshire, but he didn't. Pete Buttigieg did better than expected because he got the caucus bump. It's a bump he was never intended to get. So it's like, this is what I'm saying. We have to reach across to these other people to explain to them, you're getting screwed too. This isn't a you versus me thing. It's an us versus them thing. And they have you fooled into believing you're one of them. You're not. Believe me, you are not. You get in their way, you're up against the wall with the rest of us. And Bernie's such a coward. That's why I call him Bend Over Bernie, Daniel. They can't do anything for this man to stand up for himself. They could, the WikiLeaks thing comes out, he endorses Hillary Clinton. He for years was pro-Trump's position on trading guns, but in the era of Trump, he had to completely reverse himself. They rob him of the nomination in 2020 again, and look what he bends over. I mean, the guy is just incapable.
Rich,
I feel bad if you think Bernie's your champion. He's not.
You know how Democrats rationalize what happened to Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020. Democrats tell you he's not a Democrat.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
It's no holds barred because he's a Democrat socialist. He's not even a Democrat. So we can do whatever we want. I can't tell you how many Democrats have told me that when I hit them with, particularly 2016, the way he was disenfranchised in 2016 was just egregious. And And I'm routinely told, because listen, Rich, I'm a trial lawyer. Okay. So I represent injured people. The vast majority of trial lawyers are Democrats. So I deal with Democrat trial lawyers all the time. I can tell you, they do not care what had to be done to derail Bernie Sanders. They just don't. And
especially in 2022, Daniel, because you got to implicate Barack Obama, their hero. Because on the front end, there was like a two front war against Bernie Sanders in 2020. The behind the scenes stuff Obama was doing, for people who don't know, you're about to find out. He was calling around, threatening everybody and bribing everyone. So Pete Buttigieg was bribed out of the race before Super Tuesday. That's why he is now the Secretary of Transportation, even though the guy has never held a job in his life. All right. I mean, think about it. Minnesota was another big deal. If Amy Klobuchar did not get out of the race, Bernie Sanders could have won the state of Minnesota. And there were all these Super Tuesday states. So Obama was calling around behind the scenes. He got James Clyburn on board to deliver South Carolina for Joe Biden, which was a big moment. They had that 2-week period between South Carolina and Super Tuesday. And in that 2 weeks, the media was playing one front, saying to the Democratic voter, we know your heart is with Bernie, because they could see it in the polling. Nobody wanted Joe Biden. Their heart was with Bernie. But Bernie can't win. Bernie can't win. Bernie can't win. Bernie can't win. Trump is going to be president again. Oh, if you ever watched MSNBC or any of them during that period, you will see it was nonstop talk about how Bernie Sanders could not win. And then in the back end, you had Barack Obama calling everybody, telling everybody, you're going to give the presidency to Donald Trump. I will make sure that you have no future in this party if you do not comply. And if we give Trump the presidency because you screwed this up, I am going to bury you. So, and he hates Joe Biden. That's the other secret here. Nobody ever talks about. Barack Obama can't stand Joe Biden. And I really feel bad. It's like I at least take some level of comfort, Daniel, in the fact that Barack Obama has to look in the mirror every day and he has to go along with the lie. Like, Joe Biden got more this than he did, right? Like, I'm trying to be careful and walk the line. Like, you have to pretend to believe it.
How about 12 million more votes? Come on.
Got more African American votes in these states than Barack Obama did.
Nobody believes it. Hey, but you know what? Talking about election integrity, I'm actually working on another book series about election integrity 2020. It was originally going to be about the 2020 election, but
breaking news.
Everybody thought 2020 was a one-off, but the Democrats didn't stop. They're not going to stop until they are stopped. You know,
until they are stopped. Yes.
So they are stopped. Yes. But one thing I wanted to comment on, to expound on about what you mentioned about how once people make their mind up. Yeah. In my profession, we see that all the time. If you do a mock trial, or if you do a focus group, and a lot of times in a case, you're not sure what evidence is actually going to get in, what evidence is the jury actually going to see until the judge rules on it. So you'll do a focus group, and if you got some questionable evidence, it may be for or against your case, you'll do one focus group and keep that evidence out, okay? And don't let the focus group or the mock jury see it. And then you get your result. And then you need an entire new group of people, a new focus group, a new mock trial jury, to hear everything all over again with the evidence that you're not sure if the jury is going to hear or not. And that's the way it's done. And the reason it's done that way is because of the information bias. There's a term for it, and I forget what it is, but it's the bias that people have once they've made up their mind. Okay? So if I take a focus group and they've decided a case and they said, oh, here's who should win, here's what the award is, whatever. If I take that same group of people and say, okay, here's the evidence you didn't get to hear. Here's what we didn't tell you. Now we're telling you this, right? They're going to rationalize their original decision to affirm it, right? Because the new information doesn't matter. They already made their mind up. And we deal with that.
They tell a story to themselves. They tell a story to themselves, Daniel. And I don't know if you've ever read it. I wrote survey guidelines for jury research. I think it was titled. I actually, based on my own experiences, working with lawyers, Robert Barnes, certainly, but others. And that's what I found. I mean, these people come to these conclusions and they tell a story through their own belief systems and experiences to make their opinion fit their world. I mean, I don't know how to explain, even though they know it doesn't matter what evidence you show them once they've passed that point. It doesn't matter. You could see, look, the fingerprints on the gun don't belong to him. They already made up their mind. That guy's a perfect example of that was the replaced juror. And I know he's not a sympathetic character, but it's one of the ones that I studied, Scott Peterson. When Travis, I think his name was thrown off the jury because the judge was deeply, deeply biased. I mean, Scott Peterson got railroaded. Whether you think he killed Lacey or not is another story. He got railroaded. It's one of the worst injustices ever. And his counsel, Mr. Big Shot, really screwed up that case. But yeah, I mean, there's this woman that was put on the jury to replace Travis. They called her Strawberry Top or something. I don't know, Strawberry Shortcakes. I don't know. She was redheaded and really. You think Travis spoke out of turn? This woman had comments that would get anybody thrown off a jury, yet the judge left her on the jury. And her own experiences with men. Scott Peterson was like the men that abused her. And she could not get it out of her head. It doesn't matter what the evidence showed. Lacey weighed this much with the baby. The boat would have tipped over. Oh, well, I don't believe it. The dogs are now not even admissible, but I still believe it. I mean, she just, no matter what, she was going to convict Scott Peterson. That's it.
Right. Yeah, that happens a lot, actually. I know people, listen, one thing I wanted to your viewers and your listeners to know, because a lot of this seems it's dispiriting. You know, we think, man, we're just overwhelmed. Yeah. We're overwhelmed everywhere we turn. But listen, on the fake news front first, it's better. And the reason it's better because if legacy media had the influence they did 30 years ago, Donald Trump would have never won in 2016. Period.
That's very true. Right. Yeah.
So there are more places to get information. The availability of information is infinitely better than it used to be, and you can get to the truth with just a little bit of digging most of the time. So all these fake news legacy media outlets are in decline. New York Times, Washington Post, Gannett News Services, CNN, and some of them, if they weren't such leviathans, would have collapsed already, and some of them have. The Weekly Standard, for instance, comes to mind. But so this is getting better. We're actually on the positive side on fake news. But the one thing I want to encourage people about, because I know we just touched on it, and it's really not the focus of what we're talking about election integrity, is I would like for people to realize we have a long venerated history of election fraud in this country.
Tammany Hall.
That's right. Boss Tweed.
Boss Tweed, yeah.
Democrats have been stealing elections for 160 years.
Nixon Kennedy. Come on.
LBJ in Texas.
That's
87
right.
Votes, 87 votes. You know, listen. So this is nothing new. I can tell you the state of Louisiana where I live we had a series of just horrible elections dated in the early 1920s. Then we had one in 1960. And we have battled the Democrat, I call it the Democrat fraud machine, but we beat them. All right.
Yeah. I actually heard really interesting stuff. And that area was really corrupt back then, but the cops used to do side work as like guards for drug dealers. Like it was a lot of problems in these areas in the city, and there were these several cops that apparently just had stories, lived through it, and it was a machine. It was a machine, and it's not there anymore. So what you're saying is there absolutely nothing stays the same, and there always is hope. I mean, there has been, and usually what happens too is when we go through these, if you just look at it historically, when we go through these periods of like depraved indifference, I don't know what else to say, but like, just callous abuse of basic human rights, and morality goes out the window. It usually is, it comes down. It does normally. And it gets replaced with people who you remember, that basically, we can't go down that road again, right? So even the point of this entire country was to get away from that before what was happening in Europe kind of, blended into these faithful people. I mean, they didn't want to be part of that world anymore. So I think that's inherently human, Daniel, and there are always going to be people who are trying, to make things better, and things that don't work. So systems like this that lose credibility, they never last. They can't have staying power. Regime credibility is a big deal. And eventually people conclude, And look, Marty and Kennedy's talking about Richard Daley, the Daley Machine in Chicago in the 1960 election. Right.
Look, we had a group of Democrats around the turn of the 19th century, or the turn of the 20th century, rather, in Louisiana called Bourbons. All right. And we had a series of bourbon governors. One of them was Murphy J. Foster. And their motto was vote right or we'll count them right. All right.
Yeah.
That's what they told people. You might as well vote for us because we're going to count it like you voted for us anyway. And so, but we overcame that eventually. And so I try to tell people, look, stay positive. There are people who are talking about, it's just like people who, when it comes to fake news, they're like, it's an onslaught all the time. But look, it's just like me, Rich. I don't get my news from any legacy media outlets. I don't get any news from ABC, NBC, CBS, from New York Times, Washington.
Yeah.
I mean, I subscribe to them, but for research purposes. Otherwise, I can't read their articles. But I don't get my news there. So you get it elsewhere. And the other thing too, since circling back around to fake news, is I outline in the books how to spot it. It's not real complicated, frankly, but
that's some of the best stuff in your books. How to spot it. Such great.
Learn how to spot it. It doesn't have any influence on you. Another great frustration of mine is how so many politicians, they've got this idea they got to comment on everything. Well, if that's true, blah 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 blah. Instead of just saying, look, I'm not believing any more anonymously sourced stories from the New York Times if it's about Donald Trump. Right.
Right.
And just say, no,
right.
They can't say that. Of course, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell don't want to say that. They want to comment negatively on everything they can think of, But so once you're educated on it and you're able to spot it, it just doesn't influence you anymore. And the challenge for us is to get enough people who are there. I know that you're not influenced by fake news. I'm not influenced by fake news. And I mean, not my conduct or anything like that. And once there are enough people who are like that, there are enough people who says, you know what, I'm tuning out and I'm not going to get my information from legacy media anymore. They'll collapse. And they're in the process of collapsing.
Washington Post it just was reported last week. The Washington Post lost like a third of their subscriptions in an election year, folks.
Which is 500,000 subscriptions. Now, wow. I got to tell you, Rich, I was blown away that they had 500,000 subscriptions.
Laura's laughing up in the other room. No kidding. No kidding.
I mean, that is the worst rag. I'm telling you, it's whenever you.
And you mentioned bourbons before, by the way. Grover Cleveland, who came from New York, was a bourbon and was known for being anti-corrupt. The machine was there. The Tammany machine was there. They first wanted him locally because they were tired of the corruption. Then he became the governor of New York because they were tired of the corruption, even though he was from that party with the corruption. So, it's a point of fact that things can change. It really can. And what happened with Grover Cleveland? They wanted him as president. He did a very good job, but the establishment wanted nothing to do with him. The DC class wanted nothing to do with him. The guilds, they hated his guts. So they got rid of him. They wanted free silver and they collapsed the economy. And 4 years later, everybody was begging Grover Cleveland to come back and fix it, which he did, by the way. And he's the only president to do that, which is interesting. Some similarities we'll see. I got to ask your opinion, though. Dan, Trump, I get it. And, you know, he sold those cards and he raised $4.5 million. But you know, because definitely once you're familiar with how the news media operates, if you wanted your free speech agenda to really get a lot of attention, don't you agree that like he should have waited? Or I mean, what do you think? Not don't you agree? What do you think? That they maybe should have separated those days, you know, those announcements in maybe day 1, day 2, and then today announce the cards. Yesterday announced the agenda. Today announced the cards. What do you think? Just because of how the media works, man.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. In fact, I commented on social media on Twitter earlier today, maybe yesterday, about that. Well, no, I'm sorry. I commented on Truth Social. And somebody was commenting about the announcement, you know, the big announcement, and then it was those cards. And I came and said, look, I was disappointed. I thought it was going to be important. You know, the First Amendment policy, the free speech policy that the president published yesterday is important.
Very good, very important stuff in there. I mean, and by the way, what appears to be, yeah, I mean, it's a serious proposal, Dan. I mean, it's got a lot of stuff in there that really would have an impact. I mean, there's, you know, to people who say, well, he had 4 years to do it. It's like some people don't seem to understand that his biggest mistake was that he was a businessman, not a politician. And he was like learning on a curve. If he had a second administration, he wouldn't. I know this because I do talk to people so I know where his mind, or at least I know some of where his mind is. It would be a very different Trump administration this time, not with economic policy and stuff like that. It's just, for instance, he finds no use for whole departments in the federal government at this point. Like he would get, so if you're an anti-deep stater, I don't want to even say it because I don't want to send these people into a frantic, let's stop Trump tissy. But it would be something to behold if you're like me and you look back at agencies like the ATF and Waco pisses you off. Or if you're like me and you look back on the FBI or the ATF again, and you look back on Ruby Ridge and it pisses you off, then this Trump is your Trump because he is like, the executive can do a lot on their own, Dan, when it comes to that.
Oh, yeah,
they can.
Now, look, I'm like most people that were Trump supporters. I felt like President Trump got robbed of his first administration. And I think a lot of people feel the same way about it. And I think he did. And in that respect, I'm like, hey, you know, the man's entitled to have his presidency because he got gypped the first time. But one concern I have about it is he'll really have, if President Trump stays the course, runs, gets reelected, he'll have 2 years. Because after the midterms, he will be a lame duck. Yeah, so he's really going to be running for 2 years, and if either the Democrats or the GOP establishment winds up in control at the midterms in 2026, for all practical purposes, his ability to implement a legislative agenda will be over. So he's really running for 2 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that, which is why his choice of who he runs on the ticket with him is important. So because, and it's also a matter of his age, Daniel. I mean, he's not a young man anymore. He may act like a young man. I got to tell you, as somebody who's I was polling, of course, but I also was data journalism editor at PPD. That guy got you up early. I mean, you work. Then I think a lot of the media hated that too. They liked that Bill Clinton didn't get to the White House until 10:30 in the morning. George W. Bush, he didn't get there early. It was like 9, but he had this routine every day. Up at 7, out the door at 7:30. That's right. Out the door at 7:30, jogging, taking the dog for a walk, and then he'd get in the office. And by the way, if you were not there by 9, you were in trouble. George Bush, if you were expected to be in the Oval Office to work at 9 o'clock and you were not there, you had a problem. Barack Obama was like, It was a party. I mean, he didn't work hard at all. He hated the job of being president. He never liked making phone calls to members of Congress. He used to delegate that to Joe Biden. Remember? I mean, the relationship breakdown between Capitol Hill and the White House really began under Barack Obama, where they just would not talk for long periods of time. Barack Obama never spoke with John Boehner. And until he'd offer him a port at the White House or something. Did you see Boehner's pathetic spectacle? I'm gonna get it, Dan. I'm gonna get it. Did you see his what a pathetic little weakling this guy is? And I do see the question. It's embarrassing. I do see the question about Tucker Carlson's report, and I'm gonna get that up. If somebody has the clip of Robert going after DeSantis, I'll play it and we can talk about it. But I really want to get to this. Where is it? I know I had it here. I had it. I'll tell you that. Where did it go? Where did it go? Come on. Oh, he's such a crybaby. He started crying over Nancy Pelosi. He was like crying about what a wonderful person she was and the service to the country and this and that. And it's absolutely embarrassment. Here's another clip though I could play because this is something, speaking of the fake news, and it's about 2 minutes long, but speaking of the fake news, Ryan Gerdusky put this up and he said in the 90s, legendary entertainer Eartha Kitt was on the Whoopi Goldberg show, retelling a conversation she had with First Lady Johnson about Vietnam. The Johnsons blacklisted her from Hollywood for years after this conversation, but she was completely correct. I want to play it so you people hear this. Remember how he just said it because that's how it went. The Johnsons blacklisted her from Hollywood. Hollywood did not. All right. Now imagine if somebody said this today. Listen to what she's saying and tell me this isn't Trump's entire message. Are you ready? Or 16.
That I was saying to Mrs. Johnson.
16
also,
message.
Whoopi, I said to her, we were taught to hate the Germans because we had to fight that war. We were taught to hate the Koreans because we had to fight that war. We were taught to hate the Vietnamese because, et cetera, et cetera. We were taught to hate the Japanese. When the wars were over, you didn't tell us not to hate them. You didn't retrain us. And then on top of all of that, you took the industry out of the United States and gave the American jobs to the enemy. How could you possibly expect us to accept that when you never told us any differently? And now you're telling us that we're a problem? And we came home from these wars without a job? And look at the Gulf War. These boys came home and didn't even find practically enough money to pay their mortgages. And they're considered undesirables. The boys who came back from Vietnam were not even considered first-class citizens when they came back. They were hated, undesirables. And you are now telling us that...
Otherwise known as deplorables, folks. Otherwise known as deplorables, right? I mean, you guys get the gist here. I don't have to keep playing the clip. You get the gist here. Otherwise known as deplorables, undesirables. I mean, could you imagine if there was...
Ironically...
Well, look at James Woods. He says something like that. He's banned. He'll never do a movie again.
Yeah, without a doubt. You know, Whoopi's show, that little talk show she had for a year or two back in the 90s was actually
I
really
remember.
good. And she had...
It was.
She had some... really controversial people on, and look, that's the difference. One of the differences between classical liberalism and modern liberalism. Classical liberals were dedicated to free speech and still are.
Yeah.
Classical liberalism, those people believe in free speech and free expression and diversity of viewpoints. Modern leftists do not. Speech is violence. So, you know, of course, I don't know what Whoopi Goldberg's view is of those things today. I pay no attention to it today. But she was committed to free speech in the past, obviously. Along the lines of what she was talking about, there's a good scene in the movie, oh gosh, Good Will Hunting, where Matt Damon's character is he's being recruited by the NSA, And he
Yes.
does a little speech about I'm going to go fight a foreign war, and I come back, and you're going to train me and give my job away to the people. You're going to bring those people over to the United States and give my job to them, and I'm going to be out on the street.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. It's the same. Right. And by the way, somebody asked, and I want to make mention so he doesn't think Tatone on Rumble said, for today's Christmas show, can we compare the fantastic Christmas decorations of Melania Trump to the travesties of our current fake doctor and first lady? We are going to do that next week, actually. And I got that idea because I saw an article on MSN that is saying, it's headlined, "How Joe Biden's Christmas decor is making everyone talk about Melania Trump." And then I started digging into it. And what I'm finding out is that even people who hate the Trumps are like, God, this is awful. And Melania Trump, for all, whatever you say about Melania Trump, Christmas at the White House was magical under Melania Trump. And if you compare them, there are people, apparently, they hate each other. And Melania Trump makes a lot of digs, to basically saying, look at her crappy. She's got no class. She's got no taste. She's got no class. So we are going to do that next week. I should be back, just so everybody knows. I should be back for Friday's show, which is the day before Christmas Eve. If I'm not, I'm going to have a canary. I'll tell you right now. We may even do a show on Monday to make up for the one we're going to miss on Wednesday, because I will be across the country.
I was working during the first hour of the show, and I could probably get the answer to this by watching it later, but I was curious to see how It's a Wonderful Life did, or if it showed up in the voting.
I didn't. I think like 2 people cited It Was a Wonderful Life, but I didn't, because it was like A Christmas Carol. So, I didn't do that. We may do, and maybe I'll do this. What's your favorite Christmas movie? Period. And then we'll see what wins, because, or maybe we'll pick some classics and say, what is your favorite classic? Or maybe both, because this was really cool. I enjoyed this. And I was like watching it like a horse race. I could see immediately that Alistair Sim and George C. Scott were doing really well. And then the Muppets like shot up right to them. And I was like, oh my God, look at this, Lord of the Muppets out of nowhere. And then you could see Scrooged in the last like day or two with Bill Murray really started to gain some traction, though they never got beyond. Let me just look. He never got.
Yeah, I just missed I missed the parameters of the contest, because I saw when you posted on Rules, and I didn't get a chance to go follow through because I thought it was for who's the favorite Christmas special, which for me is It's a Wonderful Life.
I love It's a Wonderful Life. Love it. Love it.
We have a tradition where I watch it every Christmas Eve. So.
Donna Reed was so beautiful. Such a beautiful woman. I'd probably get in trouble for saying this, but I'm just going to say it. There aren't too many women in the history of the world who have legs like Donna Reed. Oh my God. She was amazing. And
fortunately, you can still say that in today's culture. So.
Can I? I don't know. We're going to find out, though, because usually when you step in it, it comes to hit you pretty quick. But look, it's the truth. It's like something else, man. And I love Stewart. He was always one of my favorites. We're big on It's a Wonderful Life and White Christmas are like must watches. We have a whole bunch that we go through, but over the years, it's getting harder to find some of this stuff. And I'm actually going to be on, quite frankly, next week on Monday, I believe. And we're talking about the cultural change impacting Christmas. Go try to find Little Drummer Boy right now. Maybe it's playing by you, but it's not by me. DVR, you can't find. Nestor the Long-Eared Donkey is gone. Gone. It has been gone for years. Why? Because these are inherently religious. Nestor carries Mary on his back, right? Through the storm. And because he has the long ears, he can hear the angels through the storm. And God, that's just too damn Christian. You can't have that, man. You just can't have that.
Go back and watch there's a Christmas special done in the mid-1950s by Frank Sinatra, and he had Bing Crosby on. And it's my favorite Christmas musical. I forget the name of it, frankly, but it is religious Christmas carols and Christmas songs the whole time. The whole show. There's a couple that aren't religious, the Christmas song is in it, but and if you sit down and you watch it with somebody who hasn't watched old timey programming like that, they're just blown away by it. They're blown away with all the Christmas Christian music,
Yeah.
But my whole family's been exposed to it, whether they wanted to or not, because I love it. So I listen. I get to watch it every year, and it's a wonderful time of year. And I try to be positive around this time of year. And
me too.
That's why you had that. I tuned in about the last 15 minutes of the discussion you had at the beginning of the show, where you were going over the results. And I said, wow, I'm going to try not to be a downer about with all the fake news stuff because it was really positive and uplifting.
That's what I was trying to do. I like to try to stay fun and positive at this time of year. I remember Larry Schweikert yesterday wrote an article, Why I Miss Rush or something. And then he added at the end of it, because it's true about Rush. He always had this optimism, no matter how bad he thought the country was headed. He always had this optimism. Yeah. And then because why? Because he truly believed, he had such faith in conservatism that he doesn't believe leftism works, and that in the end, it's not going to work. So at the end of the day, we're going to win, you would say, because there's no path, there's no future. It can't sustain itself forever. So it will collapse, and then people will necessarily understand that conservatism is the way forward, which makes sense. But then he had at the end of the article his last Christmas thank you. And I mean, Laura was tearing up. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever saw that. It was him saying, Merry Christmas and thank you to everybody. Said, there are so many people who write in and say how much I mean to their life and how this show has changed their life. He said, you have no idea what you have meant to me. And I want to keep trying to do this for as long as I can, because what you all have done for me and my family is so much more than I ever could have given to you. And I'm nowhere near as big as Rush Limbaugh, and probably never will be. But I understand what he means by that. How much an audience can, really fulfill your life and help you and your family. And it's something like nothing you could do on a show could ever pay back that. And his way, and you can hear it in his voice, his way was trying to do it, even though damn well, Dan, that his doctors were telling him to stop doing that show. Damn well. There's no way that any doctor would have said, you have such a little time left, it's a good idea to keep doing your show. No, they would have said, rest and try to prolong it and spend as much time with your family as possible. He didn't do that, did he? No. So
I was a huge Rush Limbaugh fan. I didn't follow him as much in recent years just because of the time constraints. But I went to see him. I got to see him in person in 1993 at the National Rifle Association's annual convention in Nashville. And one thing I think that people don't realize about Rush Limbaugh, because he was for the most part a radio personality. And of course, he had the television show, which I watched when I was in college. But he was actually a dynamic public speaker. He stole the show at the 1993 NRA annual convention, and it's one of the high points of politics for me was to get to see him do that. And most people I know, they, even the ones who followed Rush Limbaugh closely, never saw him in person. Very, very few people got to see him in person. So, but I think what I liked about him the most, look how much adversity Rush Limbaugh overcame. He had the hearing. Remember when he was losing his hearing, and everybody thought he was done. He thought he was done. And
remember the drug addiction and the arrest?
He did that show for 2 years almost 2 years without being able to hear. Really. And then he got the cochlear implants. Yeah, and then he had the injury. And like so many others, by the way.
some kind of an injury, big pharma and your doctor pair together to get you hooked on these drugs, which I got to make an announcement about after. But yeah, and then he started buying them illegally and using them illegally, like so many people do, because nobody, Daniel, nobody is safe from that, or other drugs for that matter. You're on that medication for as long as a doctor put Rush on it, put me on it. It's going to happen. You will be chemically dependent at best. There is nothing, it is nothing your body can physiologically do to prevent it from happening. This is one of the hardest things for me to overcome. I'll never forget when it dawned on me. I got up to go in the office. It wasn't part of my routine. And I just left. Laura and I went to work. I dropped her off. We used to travel together. We used to commute together. Yeah, when we was, years ago. And I drop her off at her office. I go to mine, and I'm sitting in my office. I kind of start to feel like I have the flu, and I'm like, I don't feel good, man. I'm cold, and my skin's crawling. I'm like, I think I got to leave, Laura. I think I need to go home. I think I'm getting sick, babe. So she's like, all right, I'll leave too. Come pick me up. We'll go. And as soon as I go home, I'll never forget it. I was like, you know what? I forgot to take my medicine today. And I took it. And I sat down with blankets and she made me something to eat. And I'm sitting on the couch and 20 minutes later, I'm fine. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the pills. Oh my God. I immediately went to the VA and they were like, it's about quality of life, Rich. It's about quality of life. It's just something you're going to have to deal with. If it gets worse, we'll give you more. It was horrible. That's what they did. So you have and then you just have to, I hate to say it, you need a good support system, but eventually that pain ends and you just have to try, everyone's different. Everyone's different.
I have, like I said, I represent injured people. So I've got an office full of people that are hurt and they, some of them, make ready use of narcotic analgesics. But I had a shoulder surgery in 2001 and I took hydrocodone for one day. And I found myself counting the minutes to when I could take, I'm mapping out when I could take my next pill, and it's making me spacey. I took it for 1 day and flushed it all down the toilet. It's just, and for some people, it has such a powerful physiological effect. And it just depends on who you are. Some people can take that stuff and they can do without it tomorrow. Some people take it for 3 days and they got to have it for the rest of their lives. You just don't know which one of those people you are. And it all has to do with the pain receptors in your brain and all of that. But, Rush Limbaugh overcame all that. And he did it, in my opinion, with a lot of grace. And kept his dignity.
Oh, yeah.
And there at the end, I had commented to you, we were talking earlier, that I said, one of the things I respect about you the most is that I would bet the farm that you could start doctoring your numbers to the way the big media wanted you to, and you can make a lot more money. Rush Limbaugh could have done that.
Laura just went, oh, yeah, in the other room.
Yeah. If you were just willing to play the game they want you to play, well, Rush Limbaugh could have made a lot of money by doing something along those lines, and he never did it.
I remember that. I remember that return when he went back he told the audience and asked for forgiveness. He did it with such class. It's something that I can't stand. The left doesn't even give him credit for that. They're supposed to be the ones who believe in second chances, yet they'll use that against you in a second. I was like Rush. I had to hit a wall. That's, I tried a couple of times, but I found the VA unwilling. And then I got very lucky and just met a guy who saw me and, he's like, what's going on? I'm talking about a doctor at the VA. And I told him the same story I told a dozen others. And he was just like, I'm going to help you. And it was just the difference in that. And I had reached my limit at that point. Like Rush, I had reached the end, of the line. You have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired, guys. That's what you have to do. But
Rich, just briefly expounding on the comment that you made, you said that Rush was always positive, that leftism or leftist beliefs and political philosophy was a loser. And look, The reason the far left's against free speech, the reason the fake news media suppresses stories, the reason they manufacture misinformation is because in a free exchange of information and an even-handed exchange of information, they lose. And they know they lose. And
that's so true.
And we've tried all over the world. Leftist forms of government have been tried. They've all failed every time. And right now we've got a couple of states in this country who are too far along with their far left experimentation. And guess what? They're failing too. So, Barry Goldwater is someone that I idolized when I was young. And he always firmly believed that all conservatives need is not even a level playing field. We just need a fair one.
Yeah.
We will win and we will come out on top because our ideas and our ideals and our beliefs have more value. So, to the extent, what little bit I can do to try to help our information and Republican and conservative ideals be promoted and the truth to be promoted. Well, that's what I'm going to do. So.
Well, amen to that. And I mean, that's a great place to end. Everybody should go and put the link in the, I'll do it again right now. And then Laura also can grab it and put it in the others. I'll send it in YouTube right now. Everybody should go to Daniel's website. Check out the books. They're phenomenal. The first one I read, I damn near. I mean, I had to stop to work. Damn near read it cover to cover. It was that good. It is fantastic. You do just a much better job at prosecuting the case, and you do more research. There's another level. It's more serious. That's how I put it before, and that's how I'd say it again. It's more serious.
Thank you very much.
So,
if you don't mind, folks can follow me at Twitter at Daniel R. Street 1. That's the number 1 at Twitter, on Truth Social, Daniel R. Street. And I have a Substack. It's Daniel R. Street Substack.
Well, Dan, I hope you come back. We'll put all the links in there. And this was great. I mean, even if we just have stories that there always are, aren't they? Look at what's going on with Twitter now. I'm sure it is not over yet. You should wonder, it's YouTube. You got to be careful. But Elon Musk had just tweeted before that the coup de grace is coming, and everybody's speculating that is the back and forth on COVID misinformation. So we'll see. But that would be another great reason to have you back on. But thanks, Dan, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for having me on. It's been a privilege. Thank you.
All the best, my friend. See you soon.
Bye.
That was Daniel Street, ladies and gentlemen. I can't tell you how highly I think of those books. They are by far the most comprehensive collection and most well-sourced collection of fake news. It's not only like, here's the headline and this story was fake. These are the stories we're going to talk about that I have found that were fake news. But here's how they developed, and here's what happened because of these stories. Like, this is how it degraded over time. And it's what sparked me is that when I was still the editor at PPD, we immediately implemented this 48-hour rule where you cannot repost any of these anonymously sourced stories anymore the way you used to in the past, because they were so many of them were just turning out to just be blatantly fake. I mean, so if you read those books, you will see, well, we made the right call, but you'll see how these stories, come out, the bang they made, the bombshell, and then how over time they would collapse constantly. Yet they would still be used and cited and sourced in other stories. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for sending some ideas about places that we could give shout outs to and that we could personally support. Charities. We were just talking about things like drug addiction. That was more related to vets and can hurt anybody. Great Rush Limbaugh himself struggled with drug addiction and overcame active addiction. You never really overcome addiction. You know, when you think you did, that's when you get yourself in trouble. But somebody had sent us a beautiful testimony. There's one we've been able to connect with, and of course we want to talk with them and, you know, get the feel. But somebody sent a beautiful testimony about this group, Phoenix Strong, and they deal with firefighters that are in crisis. And thank you for connecting us with them. I would urge you to check them out. The work they do is incredible. And why I think this testimony got me is because the help they gave the family after the ultimate end, which was a tragic end, still was so generous and helpful. And had they been able to, you know, if they had more resources, had they been able to get there before it got to that point, then, you know, maybe things would have been different. So that's what it really is all about. You know, trying to prevent the tragedy and help people who really feel like there is no help. And this is no better time of the year to talk about this than now. But yeah, without a doubt. Thank you for that. And keep them coming. Keep them coming because, you know, there's eventually an idea in my head of building a network. And, you know, I want to, you know, firefighters are one, maybe police are another. And eventually we will get to the point where we have an idea of, look, the government doesn't do it. They don't. They just don't. The VA doesn't help vets as much as they could. The truth is that, and excuse me, it's Firestrong. It's in Phoenix, excuse me, Firestrong.org. And if it wasn't for me just meeting the right guy at the VA, then I don't think things would have went the way they did go. Maybe not, but I got lucky. You know, it's not like they had all these programs readily available or people readily available. They did not. That's the sad part about it. But let me just show you this real quick, and then you'll see, you know, what I'm talking about here. This is the mission statement, all right? Used to assist firefighters who have struggled with PTSD and other mental health issues caused by stress through education, assessments, training, website tools, peer support, and treatment programs. Firestrong is dedicated to strengthening its members so that our firefighters stay mentally fit and healthy and get back to working on the fire truck. Speaking with them, I got to tell you, they get them. They get it. They really get it. And I love the stuff that I'm seeing that them do. You know, the sad thing is, James, this is so true. And if anyone is a vet in the audience right now, like I am, you know that tone from the top really matters at the VA. Under Obama, they didn't give a damn. It was the bureaucracy of it. The doctors are good, but they're hard to find when you get them. And they are often handicapped. There's just certain things that they can't do. And in the case of so many, like, you know, I'm not the only one. If it wasn't for the Accountability Act and the community care that was afforded during the Trump administration, you know, they would have a lot more veterans that aren't getting the care that they deserve, the help that they deserve. Again, I got lucky. If you live in Florida for as long as we did, in the area we live in, you know, I was lucky to be in that area. But without what Trump did, you could go to an area like I'm in now and just get nothing but rejected phone calls and ridiculous excuses. If you need help, like, we're not taking any more patients right now. We're at full capacity. The hell does that mean? And veterans are supposed to be able to get care. It's just crazy. The government just doesn't do it. You know, they just don't. So we have to do this ourselves. And there's really no better time for me to talk about that than right now. Go ahead, Laura, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, you know, once upon a time, there was no government system that helped one another. So we were the original, thy neighbor was truly your neighbor, the one that if you were the one that lost a job, you had a neighbor somewhere in your community that could get you something to get you by. And then another neighbor that was able to give you dinner for your family that day. I mean, we need to realize that government is never the answer, and all the charity we need is defined is in one another. And
Yeah.
when you pull together with these small groups and really invest in them and not depend upon your government, you make changes in people's lives.
And Laura, you just really also touched on the thesis of our virtuous republic, which is the argument I was trying to make, which can be done mathematically. And I'd like to actually eventually have the time to release an updated, revised edition. Some of it just saying simply, I told you so. And then others more, adding literally an equation. I think that we could come up with this. But the argument, it really is based on what Laura just said, which is anytime, every right, as Jefferson said, every right also has an equal, if not greater, duty in a true free society. And you can't just expect others to take care of your rights for you. So, for instance, anything you delegate to the government because you're no longer doing as a community yourself, helping thy neighbor, is going then to go into a government program which will expand the Leviathan. So it has actually been our abdication of our duties because we no longer believe in, I don't care if you're Catholic or whatever you may be, that when I say the Protestant ethic, I mean a set of beliefs that you are responsible for yourself and your neighbors and your community, frugality, the calling. All right. These ideas were deeply, deeply embedded in the early American republic. And that is why it's very simple. They didn't need big government. They didn't abdicate those responsibilities. They did them themselves. And then over time, we decided we would just make it easy on ourselves. It's kind of ridiculous because every dollar that you give to the government to fund SNAP, they're going to take 70 cents out of to feed your neighbor when you could have just fed your own neighbor for $1. You understand what I'm saying? Healthcare is a little bit more tricky, especially in the modern era, but at this point, that's where we are. A great example, too, Second Amendment. You want safety, you're going to wind up abdicating your right to self-defense. You're going to give up the Second Amendment, and you will not be any more safe. Yet, the government will have grown to make you more safe, right, DHS? How many terrorist attacks have they stopped? None. Thank you, Rand Paul, for finding out that information. So it really is all based on a set of principles, and if there's not a time, if this isn't the time of year to talk about that goodwill toward men, right? Then when is, right? A Christmas Carol. That was a lot of fun today. I'll put up a graph of the results and you can see what one got what percentage, and we'll come up with some other cooler ideas like Daniel was talking about. And thank you again to our guest, Daniel Street, for coming on. Author and lawyer, trial attorney, just fantastic books, but great suggestion. What's your favorite Christmas movie? What's your favorite Christmas classic? We got a lot of good ideas. Let's have fun. Let's stay positive. Let's stay upbeat. All right. All right, guys, I'm going to go. Have a great weekend. Check me out on Locals if you don't already. peoplespundit.locals.com. Follow me on Twitter, Getter, and Truth, and the rest. You know where to find me. And if you're on YouTube and you're not subscribed, if you like the video, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. However, not everything can be counted on to stay on YouTube. So don't forget to subscribe over at Rumble as well. You may have noticed that Rumble has now allowed public, private, and unlisted. They're starting to add these features. And eventually, I'm going to talk to them because I know the member stuff's coming. I'm going to talk to them. And if you want to migrate over to Rumble as a member, if you're a member on YouTube, we can do that. If you want to be both, we'll figure that out. Because you shouldn't have to pay twice, right? So we'll figure that out. But I can see that they're moving along with some of this stuff. Another special announcement really quick. If you're not on Locals, then you didn't see it. Every year we try to grow more than the last. You're either growing or you're dying, right? In the business world, that's something I truly, truly believe in. We did more in 2022, even though we had malfunctions. We did more in 22 than we did in 20. We're going to do, 23 is, and we covered in 21, we covered the Virginia governor and the New Jersey governor, but we didn't have our own results. This mid-off cycle with the specials in Louisiana, in Daniel State, in Louisiana, Kentucky, and Mississippi, we will have live results and coverage coverage events. But this time, they will all include primaries, any runoffs that may happen, which they're likely to be. There are jungle primaries in Louisiana, and general elections, which will get us ready to move on to 24, which we will have live results and coverage events for everything. President, House, Senate, governors, to include primary and nominations, runoffs, general elections. However, by 24, we'll also be showing and talking a lot more about ancillary data, such as how do we come up with election projection modeling? How do we know someone's won a race? What is a threshold that they're talking about? We're going to show a lot more when it gets to 24 about that. And we'll talk more about specific absentee ballot tracking, all that kind of stuff, at least as best as we can do in this crazy time where you don't really know how much is left out in the precinct for sure. But we're going to see why right now are we estimating 65% of the vote is in. What went into that thinking? We're going to get more in detail. For presidential nominations, we will have the delegate estimate tracker throughout the entire process. It's just going to be very cool. And so, but 23 is no slouch. There are big governor races coming up. They will be very competitive and interesting, and we will be covering, and you will get real-time live results. The one question about Tucker I couldn't get to, which was about his JFK. I see what it's about. I just haven't had a chance to watch it. So next, I'll address it next video. I have no doubt that his whistleblower is right. I mean, would it surprise you? Come on. Lee Harvey Oswald? Anyone who's... Do I have any Marines in here? Does a single one of you believe he could have shot 3 times like that? Come on. I'll check it out, and we'll address it then. All right? But everybody, thanks for watching. I had a lot of fun today. This was fun, and I was hell-bent on making this happen because I thought it would be so cool and interesting, and indeed it was. All right. Love you guys. See you all soon. Deuces, right, Laura? Deuces.
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 Have a blessed day, guys.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but you don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette.